right, guys, so we will go ahead and hop into it. So thank you so much for joining us this morning for our Royal Tax Show. So myself and our, resident CPA, CFO is Pete Schindle. He will be walking us through some really neat stuff today. So I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you guys so much. I know a couple of you were with me this morning, and then we've got some new faces. So for you new guys, here's how the structure of this show goes. So we'll start out this morning doing the introductions right now. I'm going to ask Pete to give us just kind of a brief synopsis here in a moment of what we'll be talking about today. Then we're going to break out into breakout groups for about 10 minutes. Good time to network, get to know each other a little bit, and learn about what we could use from each other, things we're learning, just some tips inside of that. We'll come back from that breakout group and just kind of do a 1 to 2 minute synopsis of each group and what came out of that, so we can see how we all are so similar and connected and the things that we could grow in together. Then we'll have the presentation where Pete and I will talk about the topic for today. We'll go back into breakout groups after that to discuss as a group. And then we'll come out of those breakout groups into a large group setting for discussion of what came out of that second breakout group, as well as to do any Q&As that come up. So inside of that, I think the real value that comes from these is twofold. One is the ability to get this educational material about today's topic, but the second one is also this idea of connecting with each other and having that network. Scott likes to say, your network builds your net worth, and I think that's definitely true. And so here at RLS, we have a unique opportunity to connect with folks who are involved in the same areas as we are. So for today, what we're going to do is, Pete, if you will give us just kind of a brief synopsis of what the presentation is going to be on, and then I'll introduce the breakout groups.
Thanks, Megan. Today's presentation will be focusing on doing IRA conversions to Roth IRA conversions, and kind of how to use previous net operating losses or passive or active losses from your real estate to help move dollars out of a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA.
Awesome. Well, I think that sounds great. So what we'll do in these breakout groups now is you guys are welcome to, chat about that for a moment if you want. But then we're also going to have 7 question prompts. Ken's going to drop those in the chat for us now, so I highly recommend checking those out. But those are going to be around things of what is your name? What is your location? What do you invest in? What would you consider your superpower, whether it be a personal business superpower, whatever direction you want to go with that? What is something that's working well for you right now? What is a challenge that you could use assistance on? And then is there someone or something you need to be connected with to grow your business and your personal experiences? And so the reason behind those 7 prompts is to get us to connect on a personal level, but also identify areas where we can assist with each other if we've got insight into it, or maybe connections we can use for each other. Now, during this whole time, we will be utilizing the chat a good bit. I don't believe it's available when you're in breakout rooms, but just know that if you want to connect with someone else, get their contact information, the chat's a great place to drop that information. Also a good place to drop any questions you want to keep top of mind, so when we come out of these groups, we can discuss them as a whole. So let's go ahead and hop into breakout groups for right now. And if you guys will do me a favor, when you are in those breakout groups, identify someone to be your spokesperson, because when we come back to recap what came out of those groups, what I'd like to do is have one person from each group just kind of briefly tell us any common themes that came up. So you don't have to completely recap what everyone said, but maybe identify 1 or 2 things that your group had in common, or some challenges you're facing, things that we can share as a group to get a better understanding of where we're at as a whole. So Ken, if you'll drop us in breakout groups, that'd be great. All right, everybody. So welcome back. So let's go ahead and hop into it. So who wants to be the first one to talk about what came out of their group? Any common themes they identified or common needs, things like that? Hey, Brendan, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I will go first today. So I was in a group with Paul and Alexander. I've kind of connected with both of them before in some of these sessions. And have some similarities to what some of each of them are doing. So like Paul, both Paul and I are live in California and have real estate investments in both Texas and Florida, and are utilizing or looking to utilize DST structures. Alexander is in Seattle, although originally from the Philippines, and he's invested in a variety of different areas, fairly diversified. So he's interested in real estate, equity markets, building businesses. Paul's superpower is his ability to research and get into the weeds in figuring out what next steps to take. Alex, his superpower is connecting people and finding relationships or possible relationships. And in fact, he did some of that in our session for Paul and I, helping us with some challenges that we're having around lending and DST structures. What is going well? Alex is finding a lot of value in building new relationships within these sessions that Royal Legal is doing, as well as building some of his businesses. Paul and I, some of our good things are appreciation in our real estate investments and continuing to expand on those. And things that aren't going well are tenants who are having difficulty with COVID. Challenges are, Alexander is really looking for some help with a go-to-market plan for a business that he's working on, and really kind of needs some assistance in that area. Paul is working on real estate professional status, sees that as a benefit for taxation. And right now I'm struggling with lending and all the, convincing lenders that a DST is not too exotic to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing, Brendan. So yeah, a couple things that I heard in there is, one, we are having some trouble with lending. I heard that earlier today as well. So I'm glad you guys were able to connect, and Alexander had some resources for you. If that comes up for anybody else, also, feel free to reach out. We'll try to help you best we can. And then another thing I flagged in that is, Paul, I do believe we have a video, and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys, you and Scott had talked about the real estate professional designation. So there's probably a recording out there that might help you with that as well. So it heard some challenges, heard some, the good thing benefits is being able to connect inside of these groups, which I really, leaned into, because that is one of the main goals of these. But it sounds like you guys have had a lot of interesting conversation, and it was, you guys were able to connect for, the second or third time. So I think it's great. So thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to go? All right, so we will go ahead and hop into the presentation then. So I see we already got some chatter going on over here in the chat. Looks like it's mostly our staff, but like I said, feel free to utilize that chat as we go. And then, so why don't we do this, Pete? Let's start off, you've given us what are we talking about today. So why don't we talk about the who this is for, who really needs to be leaning in and can you benefit from this information?
I think the primary people that would benefit from today's information is those who have large net operating losses, real estate losses, which the passive real estate losses, if they can get that real estate professional designation, can become active losses. And then the other group would be people who believe that tax rates will be much higher in the future than they are today. So those would be the two main individuals that would probably gain a lot about having a Roth IRA conversion, or just a traditional IRA or traditional 401k converted into a Roth.
Gotcha. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what that actually means. I mean, what are the foundational pieces of that? I mean, and that probably has to lead into a little bit like, would you use the IRAs for? When will we have these conversions, that type of thing? So if you wouldn't mind just give us kind of a general background on it. Yeah.
So a traditional IRA, a traditional 401k, that's when you contribute money into a savings retirement account pre-tax. So you put $1 in, it lowers your current taxes today. But when you get in retirement and pull those dollars out, it's taxed at whatever your income tax rate is in the future. So those are what the traditional IRA and 401ks are for. And those can grow significantly over time with the time value of money and with the way the stock market does returns. So you may not want to pull them out when you're older and in retirement, because your tax rate could be double. It could be significantly higher. So one way to avoid the future tax rate is to do partial conversions today or over the course of the next 10, 20 years, depending on your investment timeline. And the reason you want to do those partial conversions is you will have to pay today's tax rate or tomorrow's tax rate, depending when you do that conversion, but you'll know the hit that you're going to take tax-wise. And then when you're older and pulling those money out in your retirement years, hopefully, you know, those dollars have doubled or tripled based on your investments, then you get to withdraw those tax-free.
Okay.
So you have a little more control on planning what your taxes are, because you have more of the knowing aspect.
Okay.
You don't have to convert the entire amount. You can do partial conversions, which is what we're kind of focused on today. And the reason we like the partial conversion is, let's say you had a net operating loss of 30,000. Well, you could convert 30,000 from your traditional IRA into a Roth, and those two items are going to wash. So when you have 30,000 in income with the conversion and a $30,000 loss in your business, that's a zero tax benefit. So you can do a conversion and not have to pay any taxes on it. And then now that's in Roth dollars. And you could put those in a Roth solo 401k, which we've talked about in the past in previous episodes.
Okay. So what comes top of mind for me then is what I heard is the triggering event maybe for this conversion is going to be when you've got a loss you're looking to use to offset. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be the primary ways you want to offset a loss. Additionally, let's say you just had a down year, you're self-employed and your income wasn't there. Let's say you had a lot of renters that didn't pay rent expense. Now you have a bigger loss in your real estate business. Well, instead, maybe normally you're making 100,000, maybe you're only making 70,000 this year or 60. You could do that conversion. It's going to put you back to your normal estimated profit, you know, income of that $100,000 level. So you can also do this when you have no losses, as long as your income's down.
Okay. So recap, what we're looking here is if we have got losses that we want to use to offset our tax burden, or if our income is down, these are good triggering events to use this partial conversion strategy. Correct. Okay.
Or if you just want to bite the bullet and pay the tax that you know what it is today, regardless of losses, regardless of income, but you know the tax is X amount of dollars and you feel comfortable with it, you could do the conversion now or partial conversion.
Okay.
Not have it offset by any losses, but you know what you're paying.
I got you. So it's that's kind of the peace of mind component to it. If you're looking at, future forecasting and you're saying rates are going to be wild, I need to go ahead and move these type of items. So really we've got three. We've got a peace of mind component. If we think that we're going to pay a lot more later on, we can do this conversion now. Other one is if our income, if we are just lower for the year, that's a good time to think about it as well. Or if we've got losses we're going to use to offset. So we've really got kind of three triggering events. Is that right?
Correct.
Cool.
Yes.
And so what does a conversion look like?
So what happens with a conversion is you would contact whoever's managing your money, whether it's you personally with your, let's just say it's Charles Schwab. You say you want to do a partial Roth conversion. So what they'll do is they'll set up a new Roth 401k, a Roth IRA for you, and then they will transfer the money from your traditional into this new Roth. And then that has to be done before the end of every year. So you have to make that decision before year end. And then when you go to pay your taxes, in essence, in April of the following year, you'll pay your taxes on the amount that you did the conversion.
Okay.
If there's no loss to offset it.
Gotcha.
You don't want them to, when I say them, we'll go back to the Charles Schwab example. You don't want them to pay you and then you put it into the Roth account. You do that, you're going to get charged with like a 10% early withdrawal fee. So if you ever do the conversion, make sure it's the Charles Schwab, Fidelity, whoever's managing your 401k or traditional IRA, have them do the transfer so you avoid that 10% early withdrawal tax.
Okay, that makes sense. So from the way I'm looking at this, then we've potentially got probably maybe 4 parties, at least 3 involved. So we've got one is going to be myself. I've got to be
Yes.
looking at my situation, figuring out if this is a good triggering event. Should I go ahead and do this conversion? And maybe there's a financial planner involved in that as well if I've got one on my team that's advising. So that's possibly 2 parties. This third party is going to be my actual institution who's going to handle that conversion for me. And one of the things I noted that you said is you need to make sure it's someone who's really knowledgeable about this setup so that they know how to distribute the funds where you're not going to get that penalty on the front end. And then the fourth party would actually be your CPA. It sounds like there's a end of your tax filing component to this, so we're going to need to loop our CPA in this as well. Is that right?
Correct. And mostly your CPA will be able to kind of give you a forecasted plan based on kind of historical income and facts that you've described to them. And they'll be able to model how much you should convert.
Okay.
For that partial conversion.
Okay. So when
your financial planner could as well. So
that makes sense. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about doing this, I mean, I've got to have a knowledgeable contact at my company who's going to handle the conversion. I've got to have a knowledgeable CPA. Other than setting those things in motion, though, and directing those actors to do those items, what is required of me to have this conversion take place?
You would have to set up the new account with the financial institution, and you would have to let them know how much you want to contribute and how much you want to do, whether it's a full, partial, or so forth. So you're kind of the decision factor and director in that aspect.
I got you. Okay. And so another question that's kind of top of mind for me on this is, we've talked about partial conversion. When would we be considering a full conversion? Like, when is something we need to talk about a full conversion on?
A full conversion, it really it depends on your tax appetite. If you don't have a lot of money in the IRA and you could do a whole conversion at once. If you have a couple $1 million in the IRA, you probably don't want to do that all at once. So it really just depends on how much tax the person wants to pay today, what their other income is based off operating losses or W-2 wage or self-employed wages. There's no magic number. I would argue when you do meet with your tax planner or your financial advisor or tax CPA, they can model to where you obviously wouldn't want to probably take too much out to put you more than 1 or 2 brackets up, but you could if you want to.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So I think I've got the who, what, why, and how down inside of this. So what am I missing though? What are some other things we need to know about this?
So when you do the Roth conversion, when you do take those dollars out after you reach 59.5 or even later, those are all tax-free. So you're not gonna have to pay income taxes on those. So as you set up your real estate business to where hopefully in 10, 20 years, you're making a lot in rents, and those will be passive income, or it could be active income if you're a real estate professional. Pulling out your requirement and distribution through the Roth isn't going to add to income. So your income tax isn't going to be your rental income plus your retirement income if you're pulling that out. While with a traditional IRA, what you pull out, that's tax, plus you're going to be also paying tax on your rental receive or income if you have it in your rental business. So the theory is, when you're 10, 20 years down the line, tax rates are estimated to be much higher. You're going to be paying a lot more tax on 2 sources of income instead of just one. Okay.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, anything you think we should cover off on right now, Pete, before we go into breakout rooms again?
Again, when you do the Roth conversion, you can't touch the money for 5 years. Unless you become 59.5, then you're able to pull that money out.
Okay.
So if you have a property and it's been there for more than 5 years, or you're in essence 60, you could theoretically deduct 100% of that Roth and buy a property with it and not have to pay tax like you would on a traditional.
Okay. Well, that sounds great.
Yep.
All right. Well, so Chris, Julie, I see you guys have your hands up. If you wouldn't mind, if you will just drop those questions in the chat or just keep them top of mind for once we come back to breakout groups, we'll make sure to get to everybody. But I think right now, why don't we go ahead and hop into those breakout groups? What we're going to be looking for discussion points, guys, are just what did you learn? How can this be put in place in your particular business environment? And start brainstorming any of those Q&As you got, and we'll come back and tackle those afterwards. So if you'll help us in breakout groups, we'll go from there. All right, everybody. So welcome back. Now, who wants to start us off? What came for you guys out of the groups? Any common themes again? Any areas you pinged you want to know more about. We'd just love to hear any insight, and we can also use this to transition into the Q&A as well. Hey, Chris, go ahead.
All right. Julie was talking about, she's got a traditional IRA and wants to convert it to Roth, but she's considering just doing a partial. We were talking about the differences between IRAs and 401ks, and I'm a much bigger fan of the 401k. I just think it has so many other benefits over an IRA. And if you don't have employees, I think you're crazy not, using that option personally. I brought up something that I had learned about recently, which I'm hoping that maybe you guys can expand on a bit, but it's converting at a discount. This comes from a kind of like the estate planning, inheriting side of business where they do discounts on investments. And I've heard where you can have a traditional, 401k or IRA or 401k, for instance, you can you buy an asset that maybe you have very little control. You're not in one of the control groups. Maybe it's tied up for a period of time, and now that asset is considered to be less valuable. So maybe it's 30% less valuable, and you get a professional to evaluate for you. And then you convert it over to Roth and retitle it or whatever you have to do. And because it's considered worth less, you now can pay less taxes on that less valuable asset. That sounded very intriguing to me. I also want to say just one last comment too. I'm a believer that if you've got amount of money that you want to convert over, and especially if it's self-directed and you have good deals to put it in, I believe in ripping off the Band-Aid. Just convert the whole darn thing over. You're going to regret it if you have, things you invested in, you 30, 40, 50% return a year, and you miss out on it just because you didn't want to pay, taxes on it.
Yeah. Pete, any insight or thoughts about the strategy he was talking about? And just, it's also this idea of ripping off the Band-Aid.
Yeah, so the discounted investments, I haven't heard that before, but it makes sense if when you do your conversion, it's going to be at the fair market value. So if the fair market value of an item is at 70% and you have appraisers and so forth that are giving that information, when you do the conversion, that's the fair market value of the asset at that point. So I'm not too familiar with that, but it does make sense from a theory. So, and then as Chris said, ripping the Band-Aid off, I personally would agree with for it, because rates are historically low now for the tax wise. So again, you kind of know the deal of this is what I'm going to pay and what I'm going to walk away with and what I can go play with. So just certainty now.
Just to add to that too, I mean, there's a lot of financial analysts out there who say that you'll be in a lower, tax bracket when you're older. And I think for the average person, that might be the case, but I'm going to be filthy rich when I'm older and when I retire. So I know I'm going to be in a higher tax bracket. And it's predictable, like you had mentioned earlier. So I try to build up as much tax-free buckets as I can. I ripped off the Band-Aid 12 years ago, and it's the best thing I ever did. It's the best investment vehicle possible. The self-directed Roth 401k. I love it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chris, for your insight, and also love the confidence, my friend. It's fantastic. All right, Charlie, what questions you got for us, bud, or insights into what came out of your group?
Well, we had a common theme going on that because a couple of the other gentlemen that were with me, we all were, are entrepreneurs. And so, the interesting thing about that is, kind of the mindset that over the years, cash is so valuable that, you're reinvesting back into your business. You're not really paying attention to your retirement all the time, which is not necessarily a good trait, a good characteristic trait to have, right? To not think about your retirement. But the reality is I found a lot of entrepreneurs like ourselves have experienced that. And only now in recent years, as more cash becomes available or has become available, have we been able to offset it into IRAs for, to reduce our taxes. So that's kind of been the ongoing thread in the discussion of how we've been utilizing the IRA, and in the consideration of looking at the solo 401k. But in this particular case, for the point of discussion on the IRA, that was one of the things that came up, is how we use it to offset our taxes.
Yeah, that's a great flag. Thanks, Charlie. And I mean, I think you hit on a couple things. Excuse me. One, I know for me particularly, I had a mentor who pretty early on in my career was very adamant about do not get too caught up in the business day to day that you don't think about 40 years from now and start worrying about that retirement. Because I know I particularly will get too caught up and throwing everything I have at deals today, and I won't be thinking that far along. So I think you're right, making sure you've got that idea of what am I doing today that's going to impact tomorrow, and what's the best way to do it? Kind of like Chris, maybe we ripped the Band-Aid off, I mean, there's ways to do it, but I think you flagged having that present and top of mind is a good idea. So thanks for sharing, Charlie. Always appreciate it. Kim, what about you?
Well, I feel gypped because we were listening to Richard Hall, and he's so good he's a commercial broker. And he was explaining a lot, and then all of a sudden the break room closed. But he was great. He was explaining a little bit more in detail about maybe perhaps a mega backdoor Roth conversion. I didn't know about that, and how different ways you can wash out your tax burden with real estate and different things like that. So it was very interesting.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing. And I'm glad you guys got to connect. Richard, is that something you want to share your contact information? Feel free to do so in the chat. You flagged the mega backdoor Roth. Pete, is that something you want to kind of give just a brief synopsis of what that is? Or do you want to save that for another day?
We were going to talk about that more depth in another presentation, but we can give kind of a high level. So that's kind of the process when wealthier taxpayers, they use that to go away from the income limits of having a Roth IRA ownership. Because if you make over a certain dollar amount, I think it's around 120-ish, around that range, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA, and the annual contribution to a Roth is about $6,000. But when you do a IRA to a Roth IRA conversion, your amount of money you make doesn't matter, and the amount you put in isn't capped. So that's kind of how you can get a backdoor into a Roth if you're a high net worth individual.
Yeah, thank you for
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah, I think we flag that one to give its own segment, because I know there's a lot that goes into it, but I think it's a great topic.
Yeah, and that one would be probably better with charts and graphs, so you could kind of visualize it than rather have me explain.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, Lane, what questions do you have for us?
Yeah, trying to get the mute off. Yeah, I had just a quick question. Is there a way to migrate W-2 401k into this Roth vehicle we're talking about?
So I believe companies, when you leave them, you're able to do a rollover. And at that point, you could do your rollover into a Roth 401k.
But if I'm not leaving my company anytime soon, there's really no way to do that?
You'd probably have to talk to your company's administrator and to see if they will allow it. I don't know if the company would or not. I just know for sure when you leave, you can, but okay. Some companies may. I don't know what they would allow. Does anyone else have experience with that? Or
I'll try to find out and report back.
Yeah, I've had an experience where it's company by company, so you may want to just check with them.
Yep.
All right. So Pete, let's tackle some of these questions that came in through the chat. I think you may have already addressed one or two, but so the first question I actually see from Lane is, what are the conversion limitations? Are there annual caps into the Roth?
So there is no conversion that I've found any literature on. So you can contribute 0 to 3 million. Just how big of a tax bite do you want to pay?
Okay. And then Paul says, he's got some passive losses that have accumulated. Best way to use those?
So passive losses can't offset your Roth conversion, but if you're able to make those passive active by becoming a real estate professional, then those active losses would be considered active, not passive, and then you could use those to offset a Roth conversion.
All right, let's see. Next one. Do conversions need to be done before year end to be considered for a particular year's taxes, or can they be made up until the tax return due date?
No, the contribution and conversion has to be done before the end of the calendar year. So December 31st to qualify for that tax year.
Awesome. Can a self-directed IRA holding real estate be a Roth?
Yes.
Awesome.
Sorry,
And then
I tried making notes to all of those.
no, you're good. And I think you actually answered this one down below. But we'll just do a verbal recap of it for everybody. So it says, can you please expand on the 5-year requirement?
Okay, yeah. So when you do a Roth conversion, the amount you contribute, you can pull out at any time because it's already been taxed. If you do the conversion after 59 and a half, you can pull that money out, but you have to wait 5 years to be able to pull the appreciation or the gain out without any tax issues. And that's at 59 and a half. Or if you do it after 59 and a half, it's 5 years. So let's say you're 55, you do the conversion of $1 million when you're 60, you can take the $1,200,000 out because it's been 5 years. If you only did it a couple years before, you could only take the $1 million out. The 200,000, you'd have to keep the appreciation for another 5 years. But once it hits 5 years, you can pull that out and it's tax-free.
Awesome. And then we've got a question from Julie here. It says, can I take a 1-year vacation living in Puerto Rico, do a full conversion, only pay 4% tax, and then move back to California?
So if you had no income that year and you're still a US citizen and you claimed to be in the US, all your conversion would be your income for that year. So if you had no other income, that would be your income amount, would be the conversion.
Awesome. Well, I think we captured all of the chat questions. If I missed anybody's, please raise your hand. I'll flag it. But anybody else have any other questions for Pete or anything we can clarify for you? Yeah, Chris.
You're on mute, Chris.
Sorry, usually my space bar works for that. I think Julie was more asking was that if she had a big amount, like let's say she had a 401k from an employer with just a large amount that she wanted converted over to Roth, and she moved to Puerto Rico. She was in my group, so I just explain this for her. And you moved over to Puerto Rico and you do the conversion while you're in Puerto Rico. Would your now tax rate be only at that 4%? I mean, you can see with somebody who's got like $1 million in a tradition over there for a year and only pays 4% on the conversion might be kind of a good reason to move to Puerto Rico for a year.
Yeah, Julie, I do not know that. I'd have to go research that before I would say yes.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I also want to have one clarification too, just so you'd mentioned you can at any time pull out the contributions. And all that's true for an IRA. Unfortunately, for a 401k, that is not the case.
Yeah, it's 59 and a half. Yeah.
No, not 59. I mean, I'm talking about the contributions to a Roth IRA. At any time even before 59 and a half, you can take out the contributions, not the gain on those contributions, but you can, because you've already paid taxes on them. But with a 401k, you can't. You can pull anything you pull out is, unfortunately, it won't be taxed on the contribution, but you have to take it out in kind. So if you have 50% gain and 50% contribution in your 401k, you won't be taxed on the 50%, but you can't just pull out a contribution with a 401k, which is a bummer.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, that's in the detail. But that is correct. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
I also mentioned 72 Ts, and so you can kind of pull it out early to, before 59 and a half, if it's equal payments over 5 years. But I just like having that option, knowing it's there. I don't want to do it because I think it's the last bucket you should go to. But if the SHIT hits the fan, I know that I can do a 72T and start making distributions from my 401k.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we probably got more time for one more. So Bobby, go ahead. How can we help you?
Gotta unmute first. I was talking away, and then thank you guys for all the info. It's been a wealth of knowledge, and we're looking forward to working with you guys soon. We actually have a consult coming up soon. So my question is, my husband and I have a pretty large 401k that we converted to our business because we're self-employed. So we rolled it over from previous employers to a business IRA, business 401k. And we want to close out. So we want to be able to take disbursements, not just the loans, without being penalized, what would be the best vehicle to do that so that we can invest more into real estate, because the market sucks right now? Someone said a 401k, like a self-directed 401, a self-directed IRA. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, is it a Roth? Is it self-directed IRA? Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, in essence, you would want to get that into a self-directed 401k, and then you'd want to meet with your tax CPA tax person or financial planner to determine whether to do a Roth solo self-directed 401k or just a traditional 401k. So, but you definitely would want to get into one that you control where you can invest into real estate.
Thank you. That's helpful.
All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Pete, any last thoughts, things to carry us out on?
Not for today. For next week, we're just going to touch on kind of like 10 tax tips if you're a sole proprietor, have a Schedule C, to kind of help lower your taxes, to make sure you're taking every deduction and expense you can. So that's kind of next week's topic.
Okay.
And hopefully everyone returns for that and brings a lot of tricks that they have, because, you know, the idea is to share what we do to lower taxes.
There you go. There you go. Well, wanted to flag, so, you know, Pete just talked about what's coming up next week in this show. Ken also has dropped the February content calendar. And that's going to overview what all of our shows are going to be talking about in this month in February. So you can take a look at it, see which ones are going to be best for you, and either, you know, plan to be there or watch the recording afterwards. And related to those recordings, so our team, because we have added so many shows recently, you know, we used to send an email following every show. Now you guys would get absolutely slammed with emails if we did that. So we are going to consolidate that. There's going to be one email coming on Fridays that recaps everything. And then the emails you get throughout the week will be much more diverse and covering other topics, and you won't get as many. So hopefully your inbox is not going to get flooded. But inside of that, there also always are these recordings. So we've got the Wistia channel where you can pull these recordings down, take a look at them, and again, share them with your friends if you find them particularly valuable. And then we're getting these Discord channels up and running. So the Discord channels, if you haven't heard about those before, just going to be a chat forum where you can connect with folks outside of these meetings and talk about general topics. I've gone ahead and added them into my phone and set up where I get alerts when someone posts. That way I can stay engaged. So highly recommend doing that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then I know there's a couple people today that have dropped their contact information in the chat. So Richard Hall is one, and I think I saw somebody else further up. So take a look through the thread. Maybe that's somebody that you can, you know, utilize in your network, want to connect with and grow with. But really appreciate you guys showing it up today. Take a look again, use those resources, let us know if you need anything else. And then if not, we'll see you here the same time next Tuesday for the tax show. We've got 2 shows tomorrow. We've got the Series LLC for, I believe it's the multi-unit investor. And then we're also have the Royal Investing show, which is like kind of our real estate 101. So those are going to be tomorrow. We've got some more later on in the week, but hope to see you again and have a great day, everybody.